boy drew a motorcycle on his hospital wall. 10 hours later, the Hells Angels arrived. The boy wasn't supposed to draw on the hospital wall, but when you're 7 years old and the world has shrunk to one small room, rules begin to blur. So he drew a motorcycle. 10 hours later, 26 engines thundered into the hospital parking lot, and nobody understood why. Room 417 of Mercy Valley Children's Hospital faced the west side of the city. From the window, 7-year-old Noah Carter could see three things: a parking lot, a row of tired maple trees, and the road that curved past the hospital like a gray ribbon. Noah had been watching that road for 43 days. He knew the rhythm of it the way other kids knew the theme song to their favorite cartoon: morning traffic, lunch traffic, the quiet hour in the afternoon. Sometimes cars passed. Sometimes delivery trucks, and sometimes, very rarely, motorcycles. Those were his favorite. They didn't glide like cars, they roared ****. The sound bounced off the hospital walls and rolled through the glass window like distant thunder. Every time it happened, Noah would sit up straighter in his bed. For a moment, the machines around him, the IV pump, the heart monitor, the soft humming air vents, disappeared. Because that sound felt different, alive. The machines in his room beeped softly. They whispered. Motorcycles shouted. Noah liked shouting. His mother Emily Carter said shouting wasn't polite. But Emily wasn't in the room right now. She was at work. Emily worked mornings at Hillside Grocery bagging food and wiping checkout counters. Then she worked evenings at a diner across town. 2 jobs, 47 hours a week. Also, she could keep Noah's hospital bills from swallowing their small apartment. Noah didn't understand insurance or medical debt. But he understood the tired look in his mother's eyes when she arrived at night. He understood the way she kissed his forehead and whispered, "I'm sorry I'm late, baby." And he understood something else. The hospital walls were boring, vanilla-colored. Smooth, silent, so that morning Noah reached for the small plastic cup on his bedside table. Inside were 3 crayons, red, blue, and black. The black one was the shortest. He slid out of bed slowly, careful not to tug the IV line taped to his arm. Then he walked to the wall beside his bed. For a moment, he hesitated. Kids weren't supposed to draw on walls, but the wall looked empty, lonely. And Noah understood lonely, so he pressed the black crayon to the paint and began to draw. The first shape was a circle, then another, 2 wheels. Noah worked slowly, concentrating the way surgeons did in movies. His small tongue poked from the corner of his mouth as the crayon scratched softly across the hospital paint. He added a long body between the wheels, a seat, tall handlebars, a thick exhaust pipe stretching toward the back. He had only seen motorcycles for a few seconds at a time through the hospital window, but somehow his hands remembered their shape. It wasn't perfect, but it was unmistakable. A motorcycle. Noah switched to the red crayon. He carefully drew flames on the gas tank, the kind he'd seen once on a bike that roared past the hospital 2 weeks ago. That one had been bright orange with fire licking across the metal like it was alive. He liked that one the best. The flames made the motorcycle look fast, brave, free. Then Noah added something else, a tiny stick figure, a rider. The rider had a round helmet, a little jacket, and 2 arms stretched forward, gripping the handlebars. The motorcycle tilted upward slightly as if it were climbing a hill. Behind it, Noah drew long streaks with the black crayon, speed lines, road lines, escape lines. He stepped back to look at his work. The hospital room felt different now. Like something had cracked open. For the first time in weeks, Noah smiled. A few minutes later, the door creaked open. Nurse Angela Brooks stepped inside carrying a clipboard. Angela had worked in pediatric oncology for 18 years. She had seen courage in children that would break most adults. She had also seen walls covered with crayon before. Her first instinct was predictable. "Oh, honey," she said gently, then she stopped. Angela looked at the drawing again, the wheels, the flames, the rider leaning forward like he was chasing the horizon. "Did you draw that?" she asked. Noah nodded. "It's a motorcycle," he said proudly. Angela walked closer. "Looks like a fast one." "It's loud," Noah said. "You like loud motorcycles." He nodded again. "They sound alive." Angela didn't answer right away. She pulled her phone from her pocket. Then she took a photo of the drawing, not for the maintenance report, not for hospital policy, but because something about that small crayon motorcycle felt important. She didn't know why yet. But by sunset, that photo would travel further than any drawing in that hospital ever had. 30 miles south of Mercy Valley Children's Hospital stood an old warehouse with faded blue siding. A rusted sign hung crooked above the door. Iron Brotherhood Motorcycle Club. Inside, 12 men sat around a wooden table scarred by years of coffee mugs and pocket knives. Leather jackets hung on the backs of chairs. Helmets rested on shelves. The smell of engine oil floated through the room. At the head of the table sat Jack Ridge Dalton ***. Ridge was 54 years old, 6'2", shoulders like a linebacker. Gray threaded through his beard like frost on dark soil. People who didn't know him often crossed the street when they saw him coming. They noticed the tattoos, the leather vest covered in patches, the heavy boots. They imagined trouble. What they didn't see was the folded photograph inside his wallet, a little girl with curly hair and missing front teeth. His daughter, Lily Dalton ***. She had died 11 years ago, brain cancer. Same age Noah was now. Ridge never talked about it, but he carried the photo everywhere. The meeting that afternoon was ordinary: charity ride planning, repair schedules, discussion about an upcoming veteran escort. Then someone's phone buzzed. It belonged to Mason Torque Rivera ***, the club's mechanic. Torque glanced at the screen. His expression changed. "Ridge," he said quietly. Ridge looked up. Torque rarely interrupted meetings. He slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a photo, a hospital wall, a crayon motorcycle, flames on the tank, a tiny rider. Below it was a message from Torque's sister, who worked as a nurse at Mercy Valley. 7-year-old patient, been here 6 weeks. Drawn this today, says motorcycles sound alive. The room went quiet. Ridge stared at the drawing. His fingers slowly tightened around the phone. He looked at the tiny rider on the crayon bike. And suddenly he saw Lily sitting in a hospital bed again. Small hands, pale face, trying to smile through the pain. Ridge exhaled slowly. Then he placed the phone on the table and looked at the men around him. "How fast?" he asked quietly. "Can we get our bikes started?" The men didn't ask questions. That was the strange thing about motorcycle clubs. When something mattered, explanations weren't always necessary. Chairs scraped across the concrete floor. Phones appeared. Messages were sent. Within minutes, the Iron Brotherhood group chat lit up like fireworks. Emergency ride. Children's Hospital. Be ready in 30. Across town, engines began to wake. A Harley in a suburban garage. A matte black Indian parked behind a tattoo shop. A bright red Yamaha resting outside a mechanic's bay. Riders finished coffee, closed toolboxes, kissed wives, then pulled on their leather cuts. Within 40 minutes, motorcycles began gathering in the warehouse parking lot. Chrome gleamed under the afternoon sun. Exhaust pipes puffed small clouds of smoke into the air. 26 bikes in total, 26 riders, some young, some gray-haired, all silent. Ridge stepped outside last. He walked slowly down the line of motorcycles, inspecting them the way a captain might inspect ships before a storm. The riders watched him, waiting. Finally, he reached his own bike, a black Harley Road Glide. He swung one leg over the seat. The engine roared to life beneath him. The sound rolled through the lot like thunder. The other bikes answered, one by one. 26 engines igniting the quiet afternoon. A woman pumping gas across the street turned to stare. 2 teenagers pulled out their phones to film, because a line of motorcycles like that always made people uneasy. Leather jackets. Deep engines, unfamiliar patches. People assumed danger, but the riders weren't thinking about the people watching. They were thinking about a drawing, a crayon motorcycle on a hospital wall. Ridge adjusted his gloves. Then he spoke into the radio clipped inside his helmet. "Let's go make a kid smile." And 26 motorcycles rolled onto the highway. At Mercy Valley Children's Hospital, the first person to hear them was the parking lot security guard. Harold Jenkins had worked hospital security for 14 years. He recognized trouble when he heard it, and 26 motorcycles rumbling toward the hospital definitely sounded like trouble. The engines grew louder, deeper, closer. Harold stepped outside his small security booth. Then he froze. The motorcycles turned into the hospital entrance in a long, slow line. Chrome flashed in the sunlight. Leather jackets, heavy boots. Tattooed arms gripping handlebars. Harold grabbed his radio. "Front entrance," he said. "Possible disturbance." Inside the hospital lobby, nurses began glancing toward the windows. Visitors stood up from chairs. A receptionist whispered, "Oh no." Because people often assumed the worst when bikers showed up somewhere unannounced. The motorcycles parked neatly in rows across the lot. Engines shut off. Silence fell. 26 riders climbed off their bikes. Boots hit pavement. Helmets came off. Ridge removed his last. His gray beard moved slightly in the breeze. Harold approached cautiously. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Ridge nodded politely. "Yes, sir," he said. "We're here for a kid." Harold blinked. "A kid?" Ridge pulled a folded photo from his vest pocket. He held it up, a crayon motorcycle on a hospital wall. The security guard stared at it, confused. Then Ridge said something Harold would remember for the rest of his life. 10 hours ago, he said softly. That boy invited us here. The hospital lobby had never felt so tense. 26 bikers stood quietly near the entrance, their heavy boots leaving faint echoes on the polished tile floor. Visitors stared. Nurses whispered to each other behind the reception desk. Someone pulled out a phone to record. Because the truth was simple, most people had never seen that many motorcycle riders inside a children's hospital, and when people don't understand something, they often assume the worst. Security guard Harold Jenkins stood beside Ridge Dalton, still holding the photo of the crayon motorcycle. "You're telling me," Harold said slowly, "that all of you came here because of a drawing?" Ridge nodded. "Yes, sir." Harold looked past him at the long line of riders. One man had a beard braided with silver rings. Another had tattoos that climbed all the way up his neck. A third held a helmet under his arm like a soldier holding his hat at a funeral. They looked intimidating, but none of them spoke. None of them moved. They were simply waiting. Harold scratched his chin. Hospital rules don't exactly cover this situation. A nurse approached the group cautiously. Angela Brooks. The same nurse who had taken the photo earlier that morning. She stopped when she saw the motorcycles outside through the glass doors. Then her eyes widened. "You're here because of Noah?" Ridge's voice softened. "That the kid's name?" Angela nodded slowly. "Yes." For a moment she just looked at the riders. 26 men who looked like they had ridden straight out of a storm. Then she looked back at the drawing on Ridge's phone. Her eyes grew wet. "He's having a rough week," she said quietly. "Treatment hasn't been easy." Ridge slipped his helmet under his arm. "We're not here to cause trouble. We just want to meet him." Angela hesitated. Hospital policy whispered in the back of her mind, but something else whispered louder. A 7-year-old boy who said motorcycles sounded alive. She exhaled slowly. Then she smiled. "Wait here." And for the first time that afternoon, the entire lobby held its breath. Upstairs in room 417, Noah Carter was drawing again. He had added mountains behind the motorcycle, tall ones, sharp ones. The kind that looked impossible to climb, but motorcycles could climb anything, at least in drawings. His heart monitor beeped quietly beside him. Outside the window, the sky had turned pale gray. Noah barely noticed. He was busy adding clouds above the mountains when the hospital room door opened. Nurse Angela stepped inside, but she wasn't alone. Behind her stood another nurse, and another, and the hospital's pediatric doctor. They all looked strangely excited. "Noah," Angela said gently, "how would you feel about meeting some motorcycle riders?" Noah blinked. "Real ones." Angela smiled. "Very real." He sat up slowly in bed. His IV line tugged lightly at his arm. "Are they loud?" he asked. The doctor chuckled softly. "Oh yes." Noah's eyes brightened for the first time in days. Angela walked to the window and peeked down into the parking lot. 26 motorcycles sat lined up like chrome soldiers. "Actually," she said, turning back to him, "there are a lot of them." Noah looked confused. "How many?" Angela thought for a moment. "Enough to make the ground shake." Downstairs, Ridge and the riders waited in silence. The hospital doors opened again. Angela stepped back into the lobby. "They can come up," she said, "but only a few at a time." Ridge nodded respectfully. "Understood." He turned toward the other riders. 26 men looked back at him. For a moment no one spoke. Then Ridge pointed toward 4 of them. "You're with me." The elevator door slid open. 5 bikers stepped inside. The doors closed slowly, and somewhere on the 4th floor a small boy waited to hear the loudest sound of his life. The hallway outside room 417 filled with quiet tension. Doctors stood against the walls. Nurses whispered. Even a few parents from nearby rooms stepped out to see what was happening. because the sound of heavy boots walking down a pediatric oncology hallway was something no one expected. Ridge walked slowly. His boots felt heavier with each step. The walls smelled like disinfectant and hand sanitizer. The same smell he remembered from another hospital 11 years ago. He pushed the memory away. When they reached room 417, Angela stopped. "Just remember," she said softly, "he's been through a lot." Ridge nodded, then he gently knocked on the door. Inside, Noah sat upright in his hospital bed. His drawing covered half the wall now: motorcycle, mountains, clouds, roads that stretched forever. The door opened. 5 bikers stepped into the room. For a moment no one spoke. The men looked enormous compared to the tiny hospital bed. Leather jackets, heavy boots, faces weathered by wind and sun. Noah stared, his eyes widened slowly. "Whoa," he whispered. Ridge removed his helmet. He stepped closer to the bed. "You the artist?" he asked. Noah nodded shyly. Ridge pulled the photo of the drawing from his pocket. "You invited us." Noah frowned slightly. "I did." Ridge pointed at the motorcycle on the wall. "You drew it. And we ride them." The boy looked from the drawing to the men, back to the drawing again. Then something incredible happened. Noah laughed. A bright, sudden laugh that filled the small hospital room like sunlight. Nurses outside the hallway froze. Because according to Noah's chart, he hadn't laughed in almost 3 months. The laughter spread through the hallway. Doctors exchanged surprised glances. One nurse wiped her eyes. Inside the room, Noah looked at the writers like they had stepped out of a storybook. "Are your bikes really loud?" he asked. One of the bikers chuckled. "Kid," he said, "they're louder than thunder." Noah's grin grew bigger. Ridge stepped closer to the wall and studied the drawing carefully. "You know something?" he said. "That's a pretty good motorcycle." Noah beamed. "I watched them from the window." Ridge looked out the window. The bikes were parked below, shiny, patient. "Waiting? You want to see them?" Ridge asked. Noah blinked. "You mean outside?" Angela stepped forward quickly. "Maybe we can take him down later in a wheelchair." But Ridge shook his head gently. "Why wait?" He turned toward the door. "Anybody here know how to unplug a few machines for 5 minutes? The doctor hesitated. Hospital rules again, safety procedures, medical liability. But then he looked at Noah's face, a child glowing with excitement. He sighed. 5 minutes. Nurses carefully disconnected the portable monitors. They rolled Noah's IV stand beside the wheelchair. Ridge lifted the boy gently from the bed. For a moment he froze, because the child felt painfully light, too light. Just like Lily had felt, but Ridge didn't let the memory show on his face. He carried Noah into the hallway, and suddenly the entire floor filled with smiles, because a small boy in a hospital gown was about to meet 26 motorcycles waiting just for him. The hospital doors opened slowly. Outside, the afternoon air felt cool and fresh. Noah sat in the wheelchair, his blanket tucked around his legs. The moment they rolled into the parking lot, his eyes grew huge. 26 motorcycles. Chrome shining, paint glowing under the cloudy sky. It looked like a parade had come just for him. "Whoa," Noah whispered again. The riders gathered around him carefully. One by one they started their engines, not all at once, one at a time. The sound rolled through the parking lot like distant thunder. Noah felt the vibration through the wheelchair wheels, through the pavement, through his chest. And suddenly he laughed again, louder this time. Ridge crouched beside him. "Which one's your favorite?" Noah looked down the line, then he pointed. "A black Harley with silver flames. That one." Ridge smiled. "That's mine." He lifted Noah gently onto the motorcycle seat. The boy's hands wrapped around the handlebars. They were almost too big for his tiny fingers. Ridge stood beside him, steadying the bike. "You ready?" Ridge asked. Noah nodded eagerly. Ridge revved the engine once. The roar echoed across the parking lot. Noah's face lit up brighter than the chrome around him. For a moment, there was no hospital, no sickness, no fear, just a boy on a motorcycle and the sound of something alive. For a few minutes, the hospital parking lot stopped being a parking lot. It became something else. A place where engines rumbled softly like giant sleeping animals, and a small boy sat on a motorcycle seat with both hands gripping the handlebars. Noah looked down at the chrome tank beneath him. He could see his reflection there, thin face, hospital bracelet, wide eyes glowing with excitement. "Does it go fast?" he asked. Ridge smiled. "Faster than a kid should probably ride." Noah giggled. Behind them, one of the riders slowly revved his engine. Another answered with a deeper rumble. The sound echoed across the pavement. Nurses stood near the hospital doors watching. some held their phones. Others just stared quietly, hands covering their mouths. Angela Brooks stood with her arms folded, tears shining in her eyes. She had worked in pediatric oncology long enough to understand what moments like this meant. Sometimes medicine couldn't fix everything, but moments could, small bright moments, and this one felt bigger than most. Noah looked around at the long line of motorcycles. "Did you guys all come just for me?" he asked. One rider chuckled, "Kid, we rode 30 miles. Another added, "I skipped work." A third grinned, "My wife thinks I'm at the grocery store." Noah laughed again, then he looked at Ridge. "Why?" Ridge rested one hand on the motorcycle seat. For a moment he didn't answer. The wind brushed gently through his gray beard. He glanced toward the hospital building, toward the windows of the pediatric floor, then back at the boy. "You drew something important," Ridge said quietly. Noah tilted his head. "It's just a motorcycle." Ridge shook his head slowly. "No," he said, "it's not." And suddenly the riders around them fell silent, because they knew what Ridge meant, even if Noah didn't yet. Ridge reached into his leather vest. The movement was slow, careful. From the inside pocket he pulled out a small photograph. The edges were worn soft from years of being carried. He held it out to Noah. The boy took it carefully. The picture showed a little girl with curly brown hair and a gap between her front teeth. She was holding a toy motorcycle in both hands. "Who's she?" Noah asked. "My daughter," Ridge said. "Her name was Lily." Noah studied the photo. "She looks nice." Ridge nodded. "She was." The parking lot stayed quiet. Even the motorcycles seemed to settle into a respectful silence. Noah looked up again. "Where is she?" Ridge inhaled slowly. The words were never easy. "She got sick," he said gently, "a long time ago." Noah understood more than most children his age. Hospitals taught lessons faster than school. "So she lives in heaven now." Ridge smiled softly. "Yeah." The boy looked down at the picture again. "She would have liked motorcycles." Ridge chuckled quietly. "Oh, she loved them." He pointed toward Noah's drawing, taped inside the wheelchair tray. "When you drew that bike on the wall, it reminded me of something she once told me." Noah leaned forward curiously. "What?" Ridge's voice dropped slightly. "She said motorcycles sounded like freedom." Noah's eyes widened. "That's what I said." Ridge nodded. "Yeah." For a moment the two of them just looked at each other. A 7-year-old boy fighting illness, and a man who had once watched his own child fight the same battle. The space between them felt smaller than the years that separated them. Then Noah handed the photograph back. "You can keep it safe," he said. Ridge placed it back inside his vest. "I always do." The riders helped Noah back into the wheelchair, but the excitement in the parking lot didn't end there. One by one, the bikers began doing something unexpected. They started removing small items from their motorcycles. A patch, a keychain, a bandana, a tiny chrome emblem. They handed each piece to Noah like gifts. "These are yours now," one rider said, "for the artist." Soon the boy's blanket was covered with motorcycle treasures. He stared down at them in amazement. Angela walked over quietly. "You're spoiling him," she joked. One of the riders shrugged. "Kid earned it." Then something else happened. Parents from other hospital rooms began coming outside. Children in wheelchairs rolled into the parking lot. IV stands rattled across the pavement, because the sound of motorcycles had spread through the building, and suddenly there were more smiles than anyone expected. Ridge looked around at the growing crowd. He climbed onto his motorcycle seat. Then he shouted across the lot, "All right, boys." 26 riders looked up. "Let's make some noise." Engines roared to life all at once. The ground vibrated. The sound rolled through the hospital walls like thunder. Children laughed. Parents clapped. Even doctors stood grinning in disbelief. Noah lifted both hands to his ears, but he was smiling the whole time. Because the motorcycles didn't sound scary, they sounded exactly like he said earlier. Alive. As the engines slowly quieted again, Noah looked tired. The excitement had been big, too big for a body that was still fighting hard. Angela touched Ridge's arm gently. "We should get him back upstairs." Ridge nodded. He carefully lifted Noah from the motorcycle seat again. The boy rested his head briefly against Ridge's shoulder. "You smell like gasoline," Noah mumbled sleepily. Ridge laughed. "Best cologne there is." They rolled the wheelchair back toward the hospital entrance. The riders followed quietly behind, like a parade escort. Inside the lobby, nurses waited with warm smiles. As the elevator doors opened, Noah looked back at the motorcycles outside. "Will you come again?" he asked. Ridge didn't hesitate. "Every time you draw another one." Noah grinned. Then I'm gonna draw a lot. The elevator doors slid closed slowly. For a moment, the lobby stayed silent. Then one of the nurses wiped her eyes. That might be the nicest thing this hospital has seen all year. Ridge rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. We just showed up. But everyone there knew it was more than that. It was kindness. The loud kind. That night, room 417 looked different. The wall beside Noah's bed held more drawings now. Motorcycles everywhere. Different shapes. Different flames. Different roads. The writers had signed the bottom of the first drawing before leaving. 26 names written carefully along the wall. Noah traced them with his finger. Angela stepped into the room quietly. "You're famous now," she teased. Noah smiled sleepily. "Do you think Lily saw the motorcycles today?" Angela paused, then she nodded softly. "I think she probably heard them from heaven." Noah seemed satisfied with that answer. Outside the hospital window, the road curved through the dark evening. Hours earlier, 26 motorcycles had thundered down that road. But the echo of their engines felt like it was still there. Angela turned off the room light. As she closed the door, she glanced once more at the wall. A crayon motorcycle, flames on the tank, a tiny rider chasing the horizon. Sometimes hope didn't arrive quietly. Sometimes it came loud. Sometimes it came on 26 roaring engines. And sometimes, all it took to bring it there was a 7-year-old boy in a black crayon. If this story touched your heart, remember, small acts of kindness can travel further than we ever imagine. One drawing changed an entire day, maybe even a life. Subscribe for more stories that remind us we're never truly alone. Like the video, share it, and press the bell icon for more.